Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Audrey Lewis, Marketing Specialist at Telium, and I'll be your moderator. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar will last approximately 45 minutes and will be recorded. The slides and recording will be made available at the end of the session. This webinar is celebrating our brand new cookbook, The Joy of Data, which has over 15 customer data use cases and is available for download in the attachment section. We also have other related resources in that attachment section, so please feel free to engage with them at any point. We also want to hear your questions, so please use the Q&A feature to submit them throughout the webinar. For any questions that we aren't able to answer live, we'll follow up with you after. Lastly, stay tuned until the end to get an update on our Home Chef giveaway. Now, on to today's speakers. James Burnham is a digital strategist here at Telium and has over 6 years of experience in account and platform management, infusing a strong technical skill set with effective interpersonal skills, campaign strategy, and online marketing best practices. Now, our speaker from Thryv. Thryv is a SaaS company that allows small business owners to better manage their time, communicate with clients, and get paid so they can control all of their business and be more successful. Ty Bishop is our speaker today, and he is the Marketing Analytics Manager at Thryv and has been with the company for over 5 years. And with that, let's get started. James, over to you.
Thanks, Audrey. So today's webinar here is going to be more of a deep dive into Thryv's actual experience with Telium kind of over the course of the life cycle. I kind of want to start at the beginning and do kind of like an interview round where we keep it conversational, we keep it informal, and we just talk about what you've done with Telium and how you've gotten to where you are today. So I'm going to start off real easy. We're just going to say, essentially, can you tell me a little bit more about Thryv and what led to you kind of being interested in Telium and using the platform as you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. So Thryv itself, we're a software company for small businesses, allow small business owners to basically run their business from their phone or desktop. We basically equip them to do what they do best when run their business. And so we help them, automate manual tasks, keep in touch with their clients, and really kind of bring a level of sophistication to small business owners that's been lacking over the last, after the last year. So, when I joined the marketing team a few years ago, our first kind of use case with Telium was IQ. We were already a customer, and at that point there was still a lot of discrepancies between what we were seeing in the engines, what we were seeing in our systems, and really kind of started out was just there's a lot of chords basically that were kind of being mixed together. And so that's kind of where we started out in our journey.
Interesting. So, and you mentioned that IQ was your first product within Telium. How did that kind of come about? Did you hear about us from a previous user, or what actually got you into the cycle you're considering IQ?
Absolutely. So, I kind of have a unique perspective in that, I came, and we had already purchased the product. Kind of little did I know that, I was kind of coming into something that was really cool, and it's actually a privilege to have that I didn't personally have to, present in front of any executives to put in. So, that was starting. We had the system in place. The challenges that we had was just from different people, coming on board. We didn't necessarily know how to use it well, and so through our partnership with you guys really helped us to kind of maybe re-show us the value of why we originally purchased IQ in the first place.
And I think that's an important note that I want to expand on a little bit. There are a lot of clients out there who not only do they start with IQ already in place, or they're unsure of why IQ should be put into place in the first place. I think it's an interesting note to say that, like, you coming in from somewhere else, I'm sure you had experience with GTM and some of the other tag management softwares out there. What was your first reaction, and be honest here, to IQ, having used other platforms before, and then kind of how did that evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if we're going to be fully transparent here, I felt like I was going around like a chicken with no head, and it was just because there wasn't necessarily a single source of truth. Like, coming in as a new person, it was, okay, is Google right? Is our systems right? I don't know. And the problem was, was how we were approaching tag management in the first place. We were using multiple tag management vendors, which is a huge no-no, right? Anyone who kind of knows like the 101 of tag management knows that. And so it was really, kind of through you guys teaching us kind of those, the 101s, A and B, C, kind of our alphabet, if you will. That's really kind of where we're at, and it was really through our partnership of teaching us. Kind of the next step of that was, when we were really evaluating, okay, now that we know, we need to only use one tag management vendor for our properties. What then did we pick? We ended up really going with Telium for a couple of reasons. One, all of the extensions and tags available that are pre-built saves a whole bunch of time, dev work wise, and being able to pass variables into different systems is huge, right? And then the other component of that is the audience stream component of being able to not only send tags, send conversion events properly and consistently, and that are accurate, which is huge, right? But also the user or visitor component, which is kind of part of what we're speaking about today.
And that kind of leads me to the next question, so I appreciate that. Wondering towards what kind of led you into what we call the server-side products, the event stream, the audience stream, and the rest of those. Obviously, IQ was kind of where everyone starts and where you guys started, and there's a lot of features in audience stream, as you mentioned, the persona building, the visitor level profiles. But I'm curious as to like what point along your journey did you decide, okay, it's time to upgrade, it's time to take the game to a new field, so to speak, and start to bring those in?
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back to, this idea of customer centricity. It was an idea that I was first exposed to in 2018, went through Wharton's executive education program on business analytics. And that was one of the topics that really, really interested me. And when I heard about Audience Stream, I was like, oh, that's how you do all of this cool stuff related to customer data. And so when I first heard of Audience Stream, it was just a natural fit for this idea of understanding customer level data and being able to not only just have the idea and philosophy behind it, but also seeing how we can practically implement some of these ideas with our systems.
That's a great way of putting it. And I want to kind of back up a little bit from there. Before you had Audience Stream, what were you doing for these other processes in terms of building audiences and trying to identify a customer across device and all that stuff?
I mean, it was a little like arts and crafts, right? Like we tried, different things. Okay, maybe we can identify this problem through combining these data sources together, but because things weren't centralized as we have now in Audience Stream, it was still, a lot of maybe generous correlations of trying to identify this. We didn't really have a tried and true system.
Gotcha. So let's take that a step further as well. For the visitor stitching, for these personas, and I want to focus more on visitor stitching actually with this question. What do you think is the main use? Like, what was the draw to get that into place? What are you using visitor stitching for?
So visitor stitching specifically, two main use cases: lifetime behavior and multi-channel attribution. That was a big thing. We have all these different channels, different campaigns. We want to understand not only what was maybe your last campaign or first campaign, but what were all the campaigns that contributed and how are these things relate? And then what things can we do on a marketing side based on this information for new campaigns?
So we're talking about customer journey here, right? We're talking about being able to recognize when somebody's at the awareness stage versus at the acceptance stage and all those different devices and sessions that might come into play there. No, I think that's great. Can you talk about, I mean, you mentioned a few of these campaigns already, but can you talk a little bit about more, what kind of use cases are we doing right now? What are we looking to set up? Kind of what's the current state in terms of strategy?
Yeah. So the first big project that we had was really understanding customers on our website. Kind of the big thing, just from a purely from a being able to offer the best customer experience, right? Is, well, if we know you're a customer on our website, maybe trying to sell you the same product that you've already purchased isn't a good call to action. And what we actually were seeing was, based on our call to action, there were some customers who thought they were getting support, and actually they were just being routed to our sales team. Using Audience Stream, we were able to identify that and put them in front of the appropriate people.
Interesting. And was there any optimization that needed to happen with that? I'm curious, just from a general sense, like how easy was that to set up? What did it take, and what was the ongoing maintenance or effort that needed to be put into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in order to get that, the best way was really to connecting our app and website together. That project was initially a larger project between getting the everything tagged properly, getting the attributes set up, and on top of that, identifying you kind of run into things that pop up with that. It was a 90-day project, so not a massive project, but it did require cross collaboration with you guys in different departments of their company in order to make that happen.
Of course, yeah. And you mentioned obviously setting up the website to pull in data to the server side so that we can get that online behavior coming in as far as data goes. Is that the only data source that we're talking about here? Were there other places that we're pulling in data to make some of these use cases work?
Absolutely. So kind of the next step on that is, we're an online and offline business, and so it kind of the next project that we had was really uploading more online or more of our offline data to provide further enhancements to what we were seeing online.
And what did that look like in terms of setting up the offline data? I think a lot of people watching right now are curious. Like, one of the biggest bonuses to having a CDP, to having a platform with this quote unquote single view of the customer, is being able to bring data in, not just from their online web behavior, but from your offline data, from your POS systems, from any sort of system, data lake, warehouse that you might have in play that could have data about that person and stitching it together.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you in terms of the setup of all these different data sources?
I first would say, before you think about all the technical stuff, is what you're trying to solve. Look, I'm a huge data nerd, and so like I could geek out on this stuff all day. But before you spend any time on figuring out how everything is going to work together, first really identify it's that use case. For us, it took us some thinking and some whiteboarding to really identify what we were trying to solve. Getting this data is cool, but it's, first of all, how you're serving your customers and how are you being more efficient as a business. And so I would really have that kind of clear mindset, because it'll help keep you focused, and also won't waste your time from focusing on things that in the end don't really matter. So kind of moving to the technical piece, it was, getting our offline data was first. Being able to with Audience Stream, you have an S3 bucket that basically you can just send anything to, and so we're sending it from our servers to you guys with the S3 bucket, which is awesome because we didn't have to set anything up or incur any additional costs with the data.
No, I love that. And one of the most important things I think that you said right off the bat was have a good perspective of what you're trying to do and why. The idea of having a use case fuel what you're doing rather than just bringing things in and then hopefully trying to create a use case out of it is one of the key aspects, I think, to really becoming a power user inside of Audience Stream, or really any CDP in this case. I have clients all over the United States right now who use Audience Stream and come to me asking, like, listen, we have all this data. What do we want to do with it? And I usually say, well, let's start backwards. What is the data that you're collecting? Which parts of it do we need? And what are we trying to do? And I think those questions really kind of answer from top down. You figure out what you want to do, and then you figure out what you need, and then you figure out where you need to get it from. So I really like that response, and I appreciate it. If we can take another step kind of back a little bit, looking kind of more from a broad perspective, what are some of the biggest successes you've had with Telium, just in general?
Yeah. So I could use the rest of this webinar to kind of chat about them. The first one kind of relates to that our first project. The connectors, if you can identify certain audiences on your website, you can. I mean, the world is open to you. The connector is available, for Facebook, for Google, and there's a whole bunch others out there, that related to us that we can utilize. And so for us, part of it was an efficiency we saw efficiencies from it with our online marketing. And so being able to exclude people like maybe employees or customers for certain ad sets is huge, and be able to not only have that data into the engines, but also getting that in real time is awesome. Anyone in data or analyst type position, like you hate uploading spreadsheets on a regular basis. So being able to get that in real time not only saves you like that time to focus on more important things, but also saves it on for the customer journey, so that it eliminates kind of maybe those awkwardnesses, or they're still getting targeted even though they're already a customer, for example. James, you cut on me for a minute. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay, cool.
There you go.
I thought it was all me. I was like, no, where am I going wrong here?
No, that's my fault. I think my headphones might muted for a second there. But what I was asking was, I wanted to focus in a little bit on the efficiency portion of it that you mentioned. About how many people do you have using Telium in your company right now on a regular basis?
Yeah, there's me, who I handle more of the audience stream side. We have a few developers who have their hands in it. They're more so on IQ. And then we also have a senior manager of marketing who's in it as well.
Awesome.
And now, I will say, after some of our use cases that we've launched, literally everyone wants to be in it. It's more of like getting like, okay, dude, I know you're excited, but don't break my stuff.
And that's kind of what I want to focus in on, actually. How easy is it for you to work with the other folks who are kind of in the middle of that? And how do you guys kind of tag team? I have a lot of clients curious about the kind of interconnected, where they have multiple teams managing different parts of the different Telium products and platforms, and curious how that works and meshes.
Yeah, so we really break it up by product, if you will. So we have mainly two developers who are in IQ, and then I'm more of the audience stream side. We just kind of have a separation of church and state, if you will. We kind of have a general agreement, even though maybe one person on the team could go in an audience stream and update a variable. There's you just have to be careful, because if you have multiple people updating the same things in it, then it can mess up how you have your audiences set up. And so we just kind of have the general agreement there of, even though you might know how to do something, like for example, for me, like, oh, I could do this in IQ. I don't touch it because I don't know what my other developers are working on.
Of course, and that makes sense. No, I appreciate that. And just to let the audience know, I do see some questions starting to pop up here, but we do have a section right after the little interview here where we'll answer some questions. So I'll definitely get to those. Don't worry. So, and taking it kind of back to the beginning, what do you think was the hardest part in terms of adopting Telium, in terms of getting things set up and all that?
I would say it was our use case. We were, not that it was hard to identify. It was just for us, like, really understanding what we were trying to do. The development side of IQ, the audience stream stuff. After our team was kind of trained up, that actually using the system isn't very difficult. It was really what are we actually trying to solve?
Right. So kind of getting everybody on board in terms of their respective sides of a particular use case and then moving that forward with other stuff.
Right. Because especially, when you have something new like audience stream, like it just, our first and my first thing was just like, oh, this is awesome. This is so cool. And you, like, that might be your natural reaction, but it's then like really honing in on what the business is.
And that's actually a good point. From kind of your start to expert levels in terms of experience with audience stream, how long did it really take you and maybe some of your coworkers to go from a place where what is this, what do I do with this, to I'm feeling comfortable, I can get stuff set up?
I mean, honestly, it was a few days from IQ side. So and we have great developers on our side who they can solve all the world's problems. It seems like. So it started for us. Just really kind of getting some hands-on training with one of the boot camps in Austin, and then from an audience stream side, I would say walking away from the 2 or 3 day trainings, it really equips you with those kind of ground level. I know how things work, and I understand the concept of it, and it's more of just a trial and error thing, and which is great. You can do that in audience stream, minus the visitor stitching. Don't mess up with that. But with the attributes, there is some trial and error that the system allows you to do, and so you get more comfortable at over time, like you do with most things.
No, I think that's a good point. One of the things that a lot of even us as marketers and digital marketers overlook is the idea of optimization and constantly tweaking to make things better, which Audience Stream I do think really allows you to do, other than the visitor stitching, which you mentioned, you don't
Yeah.
really want to play around with that. But being able to take an audience, set it up to see how many people fall in, activate on it, check the efficiency, and then go backwards and say, oh, maybe I tweak this value for them getting added to the audience, or tweak this attribute number to see if we get more people in the audience, if the efficiency still is high. I think that's a really good point, and something that's super important. From a customer level data standpoint, the idea of switching between event level data and customer data, I think, is a hot topic nowadays. Event level data being kind of that more non-denominational, just a line in an Excel sheet without any sort of an attachment to a profile. Going from that to data that is specifically attributed to a profile, I think that's a big jump for a lot of companies, and something that, as we move forward in the digital era, is going to become not only common but required. What really changed your business in terms of taking on audience stream and having those visitor little profiles? What really made a difference there?
So if you're only looking at event level data, you're only seeing a small part of the picture, right? Maybe a person did X, Y, and Z on this page, but I mean, you can argue just from a stats perspective that looking at events that way is you're looking at it in a skewed way, because that person may have had other have had other events or other sessions before that on one of your web properties or other. And so it just allows you to look at the full picture. And what's cool about it is, when you're looking at, your BI tool or, Adobe or Google Analytics, you're stuck with what they tell you, right?
Yeah.
You're not stuck with what they tell you anymore with audience stream, because you define what you're looking at. And I think that's the huge takeaway from visit data to visitor data.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's great. And then lastly, we are going to take some questions after this, but any final thoughts? Anything you want to add that maybe, what did you want me to ask that I didn't, so to speak?
Yeah. Let's go on the questions.
Cool. Yeah, let's hop in here. I'm going to read one out. I'll give you a shot at it, and then I'll add anything if I have it. What would you recommend for a company that does not have a CDP? How they will action the data initially when they launch a CDP? Going from event-driven, or this is the same question, offer-driven marketing to leveraging the CDP insights requires a lot of customer journeys, multiple creative offers, and new customer experiences to manage. It can get out of hand quickly. What are the initial steps clients can take to scale to that solution without wasting insights?
Absolutely. Start with the most important thing and build from there. That's a challenge that I ran into is we wanted to do so much after we had purchased it. And so it was really, I would start with that one business case for us. It was understanding customers and how they interacted with the website. And then we've built and grown from there. So start with your kind of biggest use case and then build out, because it is a journey.
I absolutely agree. I think there's a little bit of when do we want a CDP in this question? A little curiosity about what's the step that I need to hit before I need a CDP. And really, you need a CDP as soon as you start going, wow, I could really use a CDP for that.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. And in terms of asking, like, to leverage the CDP insights requires a lot of customer journeys and multiple creative offers. That's true, but really what we're talking about here is data. Whereas the customer journey and understanding that stage within your vertical is super important. I totally agree. We're really talking about, are you collecting enough data to leverage each of those steps? And are you getting them from the right points and getting them in at the right time? And that's when we're talking about real-time data. Are we able to use that for personalization? That's when we're talking about your CDP platform. Are we able to cross-track people from multiple sessions, multiple devices, and then use that to give them a better experience on your domain? Between when do you want a CDP and what do you do with it, it's going to come up to what do you need to do with it right now? And if you have something there, you need it. And do you have enough data to fuel it? So are we collecting everything that we need to collect at the right time? And can we use that to accomplish a use case that you already have in mind? But great question. Thank you very much.
And I would say on the offer piece, it's what data, what are you basing your offers right now? Like what data points do you have? And I'm assuming the question is kind of coming from we would like more data on how we are offering people. So it really starts with the data, and then what you do with it is the next step.
Yeah, and honestly, like, that's one of the few issues that doesn't come up often, but it's really hard to solve for, is if you're not collecting enough data. But most of the time, it's not that you're not collecting enough data, it's that you're not getting it to go where it needs to go most of the time. So if you are collecting your website data, or if you're not, that part we can help with. We can set up the data layer, and I see some questions about the data layer coming up, but we can help you set up that data layer in terms of getting the right behavioral info on your website passed over. We can help you get the info out of your offline, whether it's files or brick and mortar stores or warehouses or anything like that, and then we can get it into the right place. So it's really about that data orchestration, really. But let's move on here. This one's more for you here, Ty. Did the implementation process cause any disruption to your business?
Not at all.
Easy one.
No, it was an ongoing project. I will say our onboard team was awesome. You guys have great project managers. Shout out to you, Lindsay. So yeah, no, they really steered us in the right direction. And while it was it took a good amount of work, it didn't feel like it did, and it didn't take us away from our other million other priorities.
So yeah, let me expand a little bit on that. What kind of timeline are we thinking there, and how much involvement from your end? What was the kind of dispersion of work in that implementation?
Yeah, it all comes down to your use case, and hopefully I'm not boring everyone by kind of honing in on that point, but that's going to tell you what you need to do. So for us, it was 90 days out. We connect a couple of systems together, add in a few attributes, do a lot of testing. So for us, it was 90 days.
And then the use case itself, I think that's probably the most important or most interesting part for a lot of folks, is what are you actually doing with it? I think we've already talked a little bit about what's gone on there, but how did you come up with it? Was that something that you guys had in mind before you even thought about Telium, or is this something that we kind of talked about and figured out during the sales cycle or the buying cycle?
Yeah, it was something before we really, I think, understood Audience Stream's capabilities. It was just honestly kind of the idea kind of came from this whiteboard of being able to understand the customer journey, not only from just the marketing side, but how they're actually utilizing our product. I mean, if you can connect all of those systems together, it's powerful, right? Because let's say that, person comes in from campaign Y that's, related to a specific feature of a product. Well, by connecting the systems together, you not only see, all this cool stuff on like how they got to you, how they interacted with your site over the lifetime of their consideration, but you get to see how all of those things relate to actual product usage. And it allows you to answer questions like, okay, well, what was the first feature that they used and how did they move into other features? And you can connect all of that data back to the marketing data, and just allows you to have a much fuller picture to it allows those insights for you to do things like the offers, or spin up new campaigns or creative. There's endless amounts of things you can use it for.
That's so cool. And so I want to derail it a little bit here. This
All right.
question is more for me. I know you pretty well. We've worked together for a long time now. You're one of my clients. I have about 25 other clients, and one of the things that comes up a lot is we'll do a use case and we'll nail it, we'll optimize it, we'll finish it, and then the client will turn around and look at me, okay, what now? And there's kind of that like blank space between use cases where they had an idea, it's really good, then they don't know what to do, and we kind of start over from scratch. That's one thing that I don't think I've ever seen happen with Thryv or with you in particular. There's always the next thing that we want to do that's already decided on before we finish the current thing that we want to do. How do you go from creating these ideas and these kind of campaigns and use cases and strategies one after another without really any downtime?
If I know one thing about data, it's that the more data you have, the more that you want. And so it always, when we do a new project, a new use case, we learn so much from it. And we realize, it's kind of like maybe a microscope would be a good analogy here. Like we're looking at things, times 10 because of the new data we have. Like we realize, oh, there's much more here to unpack. And so that's been our use case so far, is just being able to new questions pop up as new data and new insights are given.
That is so cool. All right, we've got one more question here. This one. Did you get the data layer right the first time? Or did you need to make some adjustments? I said, this one because I saw it earlier when we were talking about the data layer, and I think it's an important point. A lot of folks are curious about how does the data layer get set up? How do you know which attributes you need? And do you get that right the first time? Is there constant adjustments that need to be made? How hard is it to make those adjustments? What does that whole process look like?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So for us, the simple answer for this is that your data layer is never complete. We do it on a case by case basis in the same way that we treat audience stream, and so usually it's kind of dictated by audience stream of why we need to make adjustments in our data layer. I think from our context, the first couple of times was, there were some things to figure out from a development side. Once you do those first couple ones, like the third and fourth, and then your 20th and the 100th, it isn't as challenging as those first one or two.
Gotcha. No, I think that's important. Yeah, I think it's tough because we have so many folks who kind of come to us knowing that they need a data layer and having an idea of what the kind of data that they want, sometimes in particular with respect to a use case that they have an idea for. But as they go on and on, they're going to need more and more data that they decide also applies to a next use case, or maybe we want to track the time on this page, or the average amount of time someone visits a particular page. And one of the best parts I think about IQ and any decent TMS system is being able to pivot and add that to your repertoire without too much work and get things off the ground. So cool. Well, got a couple of housekeeping items here just to wrap things up, but I do want to say thank you so much for your time, Ty. I think that was really helpful, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, man.
Absolutely. Likewise, James. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So another thing that I do want to say here is don't forget to check your email. We have the winners of the Home Chef giveaway being notified by email by the end of the week. And also, with all of these, we have some attachments that are available here right on the Bright Talk webinar page. Please feel free to check those out. And please check out that Joya Data cookbook that we are releasing. Really interesting stuff. But finally, thank you everyone for coming. These are always a lot of fun, especially when we get to bring our clients on and have a chat with them in terms of their experiences. I think it's really helpful to kind of see it from the aspect of a user rather than me just spouting about how much I love Telium all day, every day. So thank you guys very much. And I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.